Good afternoon. The Secretary General will make some remarks, and unfortunately we will not take questions today.
Allow me, before doing that, to wish all the journalists that work covering the work of the United Nations, to wish all of you a Happy New Year. And from the professional, the personal, and the familiar perspective, that 2020 becomes much better than 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, the new year has begun with our world in turmoil. We are living in dangerous times. Geopolitical tensions are at their highest level this century, and this turbulence is escalating. Even nuclear non-proliferation can no longer be taken for granted. This cauldron of tensions is leading more and more countries to take unpredicted decisions with unpredictable consequences and the profound risk of miscalculation. At the same time, we see trade and technological conflicts that fracture world markets, undermine growth, and widen inequalities. And all the while, our planet is on fire, the climate crisis rages on. In many parts of the world, we see people frustrated and angry. We see increased social unrest and growing extremism, nationalism and radicalization, with the dangerous advance of terrorism, notably in Africa. This situation cannot go on. I've been following the recent rise in global tensions with great concern. I'm in constant contact with leading officials around the world. And my message is simple and clear. Stop escalation. Exercise maximum restraint. Restart dialogue. Renew international cooperation. Let us not forget the terrible human suffering caused by war. As always, ordinary people pay the highest price. It is our common duty to avoid it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this a response to the killing of General Soleimani?
Morning, everybody. Happy New Year. So I just wanted to say a couple of words about the meetings we're going into this morning. We've obviously got the Syria chemical weapons meeting, where yet again we will be hearing about the failure of the Syrian regime to meet its obligations under international law and as a state party to the conventional chemical weapons, to answer the legitimate questions that the OPCW has about its chemical weapons program. And I imagine we'll be seeing yet again its Russian ally protecting the Syrian regime in its use and its holding of chemical weapons, which is, to our mind, outrageous. We'll also be discussing Libya in consultations this morning. We share the concerns of the Secretary General and his Special Representative Hassan Salameh over developments in Libya. It is imperative that we all get together behind Salameh, behind the UN work and the Berlin process, and the three tracks of work that Salameh is taking forward. And in particular, that we respect the arms embargo and that those countries who are using military forces on the ground cease doing so, so that we can get to a political settlement for Libya, which is the only sustainable way forward.
Ambassador, does Britain think it's time for a meeting in the Council on the recent developments in the Middle East?
So we have no plans to call any such meeting. I would simply refer you to the words of my Prime Minister yesterday, who said that he called for de-escalation on all sides, and that was a message that was echoed within the E3 statement by Prime Minister Johnson, by President Macron and by Chancellor Merkel. He also said that we would not be mourning for Hassan Salameh. Thank you very much, everybody.
Do you have a comment on the attack on the military academy in Libya?
Oh. Good morning or good afternoon? Good noon. Well, I'm sure you're all overwhelmed by the Libya issue. But I do wish to refer to the current situation in the Middle East and the Gulf. I'm sure you're all watching the situation very closely. China, too, we are also watching the situation very closely. The situation there remains very sensitive, fragile, or even dangerous. At this moment, I think the most urgent thing for us, for the whole international community to do is to prevent the further escalation of the tension. China is engaged in diplomatic efforts with other countries for that purpose. State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi has made quite a number of telephone calls with his counterparts, especially the Iranian Foreign Minister, Minister Zarif, and also the Russian Foreign Minister, Minister Lavrov, and the French Foreign Minister. We do hope that we are able to maintain the peace and the security and stability in that region and preventing any further deterioration. China opposes the use of force in international relations. It's obvious that the unilateral risk-taking military actions of the United States violated basic norms of international relations and led to the gravitation of the tension. And for China, we urge the United States not to abuse any further use of force. And we also call on all relevant parties to exercise maximum restraint and talking to each other and trying to find solutions through dialogues and for the purpose of the peace and security of the whole region and also for the whole world. We also think that the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Iraq should be fully respected by the whole international community. So we hope that with our joint efforts, we are able to stop the further deterioration.
Ambassador, do you think that this issue should be discussed by the Security Council? Should the Security Council take any action?
Well, if you look at the UN Charter, and the Security Council is entrusted with the primary responsibility in maintaining world peace and security, and that's what the Charter entrusted the Security Council to do. And indeed, at this moment, the whole Middle East and the Gulf region is confronted with many serious challenges. And we have received a letter from the permanent representative of Iran asking the Security Council to pay close attention to the current situation. And Council members are informed of that, and China, of course, as a permanent member, will work together with other members and to do whatever we can to safeguard international law, to safeguard justice, and to avoid the further deterioration of the tension in the region. That's not in the interest of any of us.
Can I I just rephrase that then slightly? Will China be proposing any Security Council action?
Well, as I said, China will work together with other countries to do whatever we can to prevent the further deterioration of the tension.
Mr. Ambassador, 2 questions following up. You said that Iran had asked the Council to pay attention. Does paying attention mean calling a meeting? And also, the United States has criticized both China and Russia for blocking a Security Council statement that would protest the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad as basically a violation of the inviolability of diplomatic premises under the 1961 Vienna Convention. What is your response to that?
Well, with regard to the Iranian request, and I'm sure the Council will pay attention to their request, and with regard to what the Council should do is up to the Council members to make a decision. With regard to your second question, let me make it clear, crystal clear, that China is in favor of the protection of all diplomatic premises, embassies, consulates generals, whatever it is, and that's the basic provision of in the Vienna Convention and by all relevant international laws. But meanwhile, that's only part of the whole story. You know, after the what happened against the embassy, and we have seen more events taking place, especially the unilateral action from the United States against the Iranian personnel. So that's if the Council is supposed to do something, we should have a complete coverage of the whole things, making sure that we are doing whatever we can to maintain peace and security for the whole region, and avoiding any further escalation of the tension.
So you would have preferred you would support a wider Security Council product dealing with all of the events?
As I said, whatever the Council is supposed to do, it should be something conducive for the maintenance of the whole peace and security in the region, and should be balanced, and should be reflecting what the UN Charter asked the Security Council to do.
Could you, you indicated, I'm sorry.
Last question?
Yeah, you indicated, thank you. I'll make it as quick as I can. You indicated that your foreign minister had direct communication with Foreign Minister Zarif. Has there been any attempt for him to reach out directly to Secretary of State Pompeo, or even at a higher level for President Xi, who has a personal relationship with President Trump, to try to mediate the situation? You've talked to one side, but you're willing to talk to the other.
Let me also tell you that there was also telephone conversations between Chinese senior official, Director Yang Jiechi, and Secretary Pompeo concerning that matter. We also indicated our position on this issue. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Briefly, I think that the Chinese colleague has already spoken. on the statement that I missed because we were in the consultations the whole morning through and I haven't read it, but I read afterwards that U.S. condemns China and Russia for blocking the press statement, presidential statement on the attack in embassy in Baghdad. I would like to inform you, first of all, as a principle, we condemn strongly any attack on any embassy anywhere in the world, whatever country it is, and we strongly condemn the attack on the American embassy in Baghdad. And the press statement, the presidential statement, was nearly ready. It was agreed upon, at least with us, with the US, when the strike on the 3rd of January came in the Baghdad airport. And not to take that and to ignore it and not to take that into account in the whole context was impossible. And we said that we can propose amendments to the presidential statement, but those amendments surely would not be acceptable to our US colleagues. So I will tell you, I'm telling you the context in which the statement did go through. It's not because we didn't condemn the attack itself, but because the context in which it was evolving was different at the time when the statement was about to be adopted.
Well, how did the context change? What specifically are you talking about?
Because we now have to talk about territorial integrity, about sovereignty of Iraq, about the need to de-escalate in the regions and to prevent developments going down the drain in the direction of a major conflict, and it could not but be taken into account in the presidential statement, any presidential statement that had to come out from the Security Council. Don't forget that the attack on the American embassy in Baghdad was preceded by the strikes US made on certain groups in Iraq. And that was a reaction, although unfortunate, and it cannot be justified in any case in the course of diplomatic immunity, etc. But the context became different then.
Ambassador, will you be proposing that the Security Council meet, issue a statement, take any action over the killing of Soleimani?
We were not discussing that, especially today. And you perfectly well understand that the prospects of such statement is zero.
Mr. Ambassador, on Libya and your discussion today, Mr. Salame was very angry that the Security Council keeps talking about Libya and not the impact of this on the Libyans, and also the continued violations of the arms embargo and the failure of the Security Council to issue any kind of call for a ceasefire. Do you see any prospect of the Security Council calling for an immediate ceasefire?
Ghassan Salami was talking differently when he was inside the room. Point one. Point two, you heard the press elements that the President of the Security Council read, and ceasefire is featuring prominently there. Will you excuse me? I have a meeting and people are waiting.
No, your draft on North Korea?
What?
What's happening with your draft resolution on North Korea?
We have a few other things at the moment. Wait about it, okay?
Thank you.